Hello.
Hey, hello, this is Justine. I'm with Alicia, and we are Woo Manufacturing.
How's it been going, Justine? I know we kind of talked a little bit about me last time, but I didn't get to hear how things are going for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been running around and doing some things and some stuff. I actually just got married, which was 8 years coming, so it didn't really surprise anybody. But we are excited, and we got our we did an elopement thing out in Washington, and so we have some really cute photos back from that, which was lovely. And then I also have been going to a lot of music and shows, and largely I have a lot of free time because the company I was at before, ESS Inc., is going through some financial strifes right now. And so a bunch of us are furloughed, which is a term that I didn't actually know until it happened to me, which effectively means we don't have money for you right now. We're not firing you. If you find a job, that's great. We're going to give you health benefits. But
That's nice.
yeah, it is. That is nice. But I'm just not getting any income right now. So
Yeah, that's the problem.
that's less nice. I mean, to be completely nonchalant about it, I'm actually kind of stoked because I'm in a beautiful state during a beautiful time of the year. So I'm stoked to hit the trails and camp and run and go to music and enjoy the summer a bit because frankly, once you start adulting, you don't really get extended time off unless you're between jobs. And so since I'm effectively between jobs, I am doing that thing.
That's
So it's
awesome.
been good. It's been good for me. I feel extremely fortunate that I have the ability to do this. I fully acknowledge that there are a lot of people who, especially living paycheck to paycheck, this is a big problem, and you need to find a job quite quickly. And
Yeah.
I'm just living that very few dependents life. So I just am doing okay, which
Good.
is good. Yeah, on whole, it's good. And yeah, no complaints. I still need to decide if when I really hunker down and look for work, if I re-enter the technical field. I know that it's a lot of what this podcast is focused on is trying to maintain diversity and especially women in manufacturing,
Mhm.
which is a high-paced space that is extremely rewarding, especially when you care about it. And for me, I do like the work, and I've only ever really had the title of a process engineer. And doing something different would be a good challenge, but I have to work at a place that I genuinely care about,
Yeah.
and I have to genuinely care about the mission statement. And so, thankfully, I'm not having to rush into another job right away, but we shall see. We'll see what the future holds.
It would
Um,
be really sad for me to lose such a good manufacturing process engineer from the space.
yeah,
But you have to do what you have to do, and I think that you can be challenged in other ways and still and not be working as an engineer too. So I am
yeah.
supportive of whatever you decide because the world is your oyster.
No, thank you. I really do strive and benefit from not strive. I hit a good stride, and I really benefit from my support base and people close to me like you. So I appreciate that so much.
Yay.
Yeah. But as we continue on, I do want to pick up kind of where we left off, because we were talking about how the transition from school to the workforce um, can be challenging because school doesn't really fully prepare you for what. Oh, and a huge portion of that is just simply there's a lot of things to know in the world, and school's not always going to have the answers. I did want to start with last week I was a little incorrect. I ranted about hydrogen as a gas behaving differently than other gases. And I said when it was compressed that it heats up and other gases cool down. That was incorrect. When gases go from a compressed state to a lower pressure, when they expand, they typically cool down. And that's why things get cold, like an aerosol can get cold when you like press it. So it's the expansion that things cool, and hydrogen doesn't behave that way in all instances. So I just wanted to.
Hydrogen's a tricky little bastard. Let me just say that.
It is, and it is the smallest little guy, and it's so explosive,
It
and
goes where it wants to go. It doesn't follow the rules.
it's hard to detect in a way that's like specific, right? Because there's a lot of things that are like, oh, this is reactive, but like your little sensors, your sniffers could be smelling hydrogen, or it could be smelling VOCs, or it could be smelling hot temperatures. It's like really tricky to play with. So
it is. Yeah. And there's a lot of technologies right now focusing on hydrogen, and there's a lot of regulations you have to follow, but for a good reason, because it is really scary. And I've had some sketchy experiences dealing with hydrogen. So I'm glad we
oh
brought
yeah,
it up regardless.
oh yeah. Hydrogen is it's also especially readily available because you can knock it off of water, or you can get it from the petroleum industry, whereas like helium and some other things are kind of like limited source, and once they're gone, they're gone. But it's a great thing to use, but we do need to be super, super considerate of it. And yeah, it's just like there's certain things that are done for regulation standards that somebody learned a hard lesson to put that sign up, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And so when you get like these other groups who are like, we're gonna be new to this, they're like, I don't need a double wall, shit, and I don't know what
Yeah.
embrittlement means. You're like, you're scary. You're gonna hurt somebody.
No, and that's exactly why we're having this conversation, because I experienced that firsthand with theoretical physicists that run a startup who think that they don't need to follow NFPA or NEC or NFPA 2, which is the hydrogen one. Like it's it's like we're gonna first principles, and we don't want to engineer it. They did all that just to tie our hands, and we're gonna call up the congressman and tell them it's not okay, blah blah blah, we're different.
Oh
And
wow.
that's really sketchy and dangerous for those new engineers. And that's something that we've been talking about a lot, is how do you build your internal compass? How do you know what's right and what's wrong when you're fresh in school and you're trying to please everybody and act like you know what you're talking about? So I want to talk a little bit more about that. And I guess I'd love to hear from you, Justine, because we worked together when you transitioned from being an intern to a full-time engineer. What did you do in an environment that was very fast-paced and you were getting a lot of responsibilities to check yourself and go and check your understanding and check your gut sometimes?
Well, one thing is like I did when I graduated undergrad. I say that like I have any other degree. When I got my bachelor's degree, I then I got an internship right away, and then that internship transitioned to a full-time role. But it wasn't my first internship. I had done other industry experience through different internship programs, and I think we should talk about internships like crazy because they're so beneficial, at least for me. But I at
100%.
least came in with like a little bit of experience. So I would like to say that I came to my like fruition in a very fast-paced space, but I at least had some like wherewithal on equipment names and what's more standard and how you do some of the piping things and stuff like that. So I had a better like kind of intuition from the get-go. But I will say point blank, I made mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I made some decisions that put myself at risk. That was a safety no-no, several safety no-nos, because as the manufacturing engineer who was responsible for the operators, there were instances where we had to try something new, or we had to get the equipment in a certain state that I didn't want my operators doing, because I didn't trust that they were going to fully respect the risks. And so instead, I would just do it myself, which
Mm-hmm.
frankly was stupid and some 22-year-old hogwash behavior. And I am not, I mean, I like look back at it and I'm like, well, I'm kind of a badass. But it's kind of like not wearing your helmet when biking. Like, you look cool, but you're gonna be an organ donor, right? Like, just
Yeah.
wear your helmet. So I'm probably the worst person to talk to on this, because there has been instances where it's like, I shouldn't have been doing this alone or at night or when I was tired. And things that I actually learned from my most recent job was kind of a safer environment, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
A, we were doing less dangerous things, which is good, but B, um, my manager slash mentor, who I mentioned in the last one, made a really good point, which is when you're trying to solve a problem and you've been working really hard at it, and it's been days, if not weeks of your time, and you're really hammering at it and you can't really sleep because you're thinking about it and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do something really drastic, like take off all of the welding shims on a piece of equipment and try and like re-level the equipment, don't do it alone. Run the idea by somebody else, because if you're about to
Yep.
do an action that could bring a tool down hard, and like in a way that if you're going to do something that you can't undo,
Yep.
you should get a second set of eyes, ideally from someone who's slept and eaten recently, before you make your like, let's pull the plug decision, right?
Yep.
That would be one of my biggest things, is like, call for backup on somebody that you genuinely trust. They might not know as much as you know on your equipment, but they will at least be able to see if it's like an act of desperation or if it makes good solid sense to try.
Yeah.
And then you have helping hands too, which is also a benefit.
Yeah, no, and thank you for sharing and being completely honest with us. I think that's what we need to hear. And I think a lot of people fall prey to, well, I can handle this. I can get this
Mm-hmm.
done. I know the risks. I've got this. But there are times where we don't know what we don't know. And I think in some environments we're not set up to be super safe. So then it's like it's already unsafe, and then you're putting yourself out there and making it even more unsafe. But I'm glad
Yeah.
you're okay, and
Yeah,
I
me
do
too.
trust your instincts, and I do trust the work that you do, but all of this stuff just comes with experience.
Truly. And then there's some things that I did that were not by the book and not right. Like, you shouldn't cowboy things. And then there's other instances where like it seems sketchy, but you have enough kind of safety protocols, or do you remember the Swiss cheese model? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
I do.
So for folks who haven't heard of this term, sometimes for things to fail, you have to have multiple safety guards fail in a row. And the idea is, if you have like a uh, something that's protecting you, that's one wall, but within that wall there are limitations, which are like holes in that wall, and then you have a next layer of protection, and that wall has holes in it. And it's called a Swiss cheese model because if you think of all these slices with holes in them, you have to have each of those align. You have to have all the holes, all the gaps in your design align at the same time for something to fail. This is a very common term in like when like a nuclear plant has a shutdown, because I think in the meltdown that happened in on the East Coast, it was actually, there's a whole bunch of things that went wrong that were just kind of like no one could have planned for it. And then on top of it all, there was like a blinking red light that somebody had blocked with a hat or something on the control panel. Like, you couldn't see the alarm going, and then it went too
Mhm.
long. And that's just pure dumb, like, luck, right? Like, or
Yep.
lack thereof, right? You couldn't, like, an engineer can't plan for somebody putting, you know, a coffee mug in the way of the warning light. Like, you
Yep.
can't plan for that. So that's why it's called a Swiss cheese model, where like But if you don't, where I was going with this is if you have a lot of layers of protection, then the one sketchy thing that you do is circumvented by a bunch of other layers,
Yeah.
as long as all the holes don't align, and then you're on the other end of the issue that finally slips through. It's not a good method, but it is a way to get things done. And I think the first step to it is elimination. If you can do something in a different way that might take longer or cost a little bit more, seriously consider that option. And
Yep.
then the next step is get a buddy who you trust to ensure that what you're doing is not nuts and that they can help you and vouch for you when things need to get done. And in general, that helps you wiggle out of a few things, because a lot of times very clever people around you, after you explain your thinking, they can come up with something that you hadn't quite thought of, because
100%.
you've been zoomed in on it so close that you're like, I understand this. I am like, my soul is touching this equipment. Like, I understand what's happening. And they pull back and they're just like, I think the floor is slanted. And you're like, fuck. Why did I think of that? Like,
Yep. But I mean, you're pointing out exactly what we were trying to talk about on this, is that, yeah, you were sharp, you had previous internships, but you were given just a really high level of responsibility and you
mm-hmm.
felt comfortable with it, but you're still fairly young at this point, and you don't know what you don't know. And I think that it's just important that as we all get experience, that we are not afraid to speak up for each other. And in I was basically part of coming up with a workplace policy about extended hours, because people
Oh,
were
yeah.
working 26 hours straight, and people even in my department that I didn't know, because we were all working in different plants. And it's just so important to look out for each other. And that's why policies exist. It should be a no-brainer that the manager's going to know and send their people home. But like, things get out of hand. So as engineers or managers or anybody working in manufacturing, we just need to feel comfortable speaking up. And everybody's problem is our problem, because if we get shut down because somebody, God forbid, dies, or we have a major incident, it's kind of all of us. So it's just this whole mentality of we got to look out for each other and not be afraid to speak up.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, there are few instances where companies go through really dramatic cultural changes that don't happen because something really, really, really horrible occurs. Things that like somebody is permanently maimed or killed, and that's when some really fast and loose companies turn around and have an actual safety culture. But you never want to be on the back end of it. You don't want to have to go through that experience and like permanently hurt a person to be able to change.
Yep.
That's the scary part. You got to get ahead of it. I had a safety rep who uh, had a good thing that I said that he would all say, which is when you're looking at improving safety or improving something on the floor, he would say, "Well, if somebody were to get hurt, we would be doing all these steps anyways. So why don't we
Mm-hmm.
just do them ahead of time?" And
Okay.
I thought that that was a really like thoughtful way of just approaching it, where like, yeah, sometimes you don't want to spend the money, or sometimes you don't want to wear the bulky suit, or sometimes you don't want to do the extra bit, that because safety can be a pain in the ass. But if essentially you have to wait for something irreversible to happen, I would rather just do the right thing first.
100%.
Yeah.
I like that too, but I also have seen in industry where safety is the enemy because they think everything's just going to be red tape. And I've seen safety people come in and they
Yeah.
don't even know what the hell's going on and just shut things down. Oh, you didn't fill out the paperwork right. And it's like,
Yeah.
calm the fuck down. So it's a, it's a
I,
balance.
I
And
can see where like hoops, you don't want them to just be hoops. You want them to be like
yeah,
meaningful steps for sure.
exactly. And as someone that brought in the first risk assessment at a previous startup, or started thinking about safety before the safety team thought about safety, like, I am a big proponent of safety, but I've seen where safety's gotten a bad name and then they're not trusted. So
For sure.
it's
I mean,
silliness.
it kind of comes back down to something that we had talked about earlier, which was talk to the people who do it,
Yep.
right? Like if you're going to talk to, and maybe watch the process, right? Now, if you're trying to do something novel and it's just the engineers doing it, like you can do your design reviews, you can include your safety guy and whatever. But if you're trying to make an existing process safer, sometimes you just have to actually observe it
Yep.
and watch how people do it. Because a lot of people get really comfortable with something that's kind of challenging or sketchy. And fresh eyes can look at it and be like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. But then
Mhm.
it's ultimately not actually that bad. And instead of the pendulum swing of like, shut it all down, chastise everybody, put them back through trainings, like 10 hours of OSHA training, it just makes people not trust you and not tell you things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to observe and be like, is there a simplified way or a reduction way of harm to do this thing that still allows us to keep going? Because keep going
Exactly.
pretty important in production.
Yep.
It's an interesting thing to balance of safety and efficiency, really.
And it's such a fallacy to think that we can do things, we can cut out safety and go faster because that's the only way we're going to get there to meet timelines, because I think you and I both have proven over and over again that we can actually stop and think and do stuff safer and the right engineering way faster than if we try to do it this way, somebody gets hurt, or we try to do this way, it fails epically because we avoided something that we all knew and just did it the right way. So
Oh
it's all
yeah.
about thinking and stop. I just get so sick of the old, oh, we're disrupting engineering, we're never going to be innovative if we follow how everybody else did things. Us bringing up experiences or understanding of something because there's a known risk is not like trying to slow things down. It's like
No.
because we want to not learn the same lessons 25 times. We want to protect our peers, and we want to do this right because we're working at this company because we care about it.
Yeah, yeah, and it comes from a place of wanting to succeed, because we've seen this time and time again as well, especially when people are bidding projects or purchasing tools, and there's like a sensor that's one third of the cost of all the other sensors that say that it has the same specs and capabilities. Like it can also operate at the same temperatures and pressures
Yep.
and, you know, chemical environment that the more expensive ones are going to put into. And you end up replacing that damn sensor 3 times. And
Oh
so
god.
it being a third of the cost now has cost us more than if we just put in the right sensor in
You're talking
the
about the
right
relative
environment.
humidity sensor, aren't you?
I'm just saying, if we had just purchased something a little bit more high end, we wouldn't have all this downtime trying to fix it later. It like
And me there
ultimately
at
like
midnight calibrating the goddamn thing.
spend the money appropriately, if or cut your losses. If you now have 10 of this item on the shelf as spares because it dies all the time, consider upgrading it. Oh, it drives me nuts.
Oh, you just really brought up some old wounds. I love it.
It drives me
Oh,
nuts. It's
I
like
know.
there's so many instances where I get that you don't want to spend the money, but if you just spend the money thoughtfully now, we won't have to spend months of rework and downtime, which costs way more than your calculation on your spreadsheet. Way more.
Seriously. Yeah, oh, it's crazy. I want to segue from that to a little bit of like ego and overconfidence.
Oh,
And
yeah.
have we talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I don't know if we have done it justice. I'd love
Okay.
to get your explanation on it.
Yeah, so it's this whole XY chart, and it's on the Y axis, it's about confidence in what you're doing, and then on the X bar it's about experience and kind of knowing what you're doing. And it basically is this big chart of people that have zero experience that just like escalate to this really high bar, and it's this big peak. And then it goes, so it's like
Of
these
like
people
super
that have
high
zero
confidence.
experience are high confidence.
Yeah. Okay.
And then it kind of goes down because they start getting humbled in certain ways. And it goes down to like a big valley that's like, oh shit, do I know anything? And then it kind of steadily goes up so that you end up back at high experience, high confidence. And I just, every time I bring up, oh my God, this one Mechie said this or this one Chemie said that, everybody brings up the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's like a legit thing in psychology that happens to people. And so I think I've seen a lot of people in the world that are either too like lacking confidence, they don't speak up at all, and we lose their contribution, which I think I was kind of like that in my 20s. Or you have these overly confident people that will just talk out of their ass because they think they know and they know nothing and make things hard. So
Yeah. No,
your thoughts.
the first time that I saw this plot was actually the last term of my senior year in chemical engineering. And this was after, so senior year at Oregon State for the chemies was hell because you had several classes that was completely team based. Like you physically got so much work that you had to rely on your team. Like you couldn't work your butt off and carry the team in every class. You had to have at some point a functioning team somewhere that you could trust to do their work. And part of this was their attempt, kind of like in the Marines where you start and then they break you the fuck down and they say that you're nothing and then they build you up as a team and you start to trust each other. It was the same thing where like, we need you to acknowledge that the vast majority of engineering mistakes happen right in this region. So they showed us this plot where, yeah, it's this, you just described it. There's this high peak of low experience, high confidence, because you're talking to a room of very fresh, soon to be graduate engineers who think they're the smartest person in the room. Like chemies are the worst for it, but most engineers think that they are God's gift to this earth. They think they're so smart, and they are smart. They are very intelligent people, and yet they know nothing. And so you get these super, super confident people going amok in the world saying, oh, I did the calculations. We should be able to do this. But you didn't account for, like, I don't know, real life frictions or real life weights or how
Relative
big
humidity.
the doorway is to fit something. You didn't actually measure relative humidity ever because your sensor sucks. So like, so their attempt to break us down in our confidence was just to show, see, there are instances where there is too much work that you cannot control on your own, and you have to trust the team, and you should trust your team, and you should ask for help, because being a star player doesn't get you as far as you'd like. And ultimately, it really takes a group of people to get something done. And this is especially true in 24/7 operations where, like, you can't be alive all the time. You have to train other people other than you. Yeah.
No, I'm so glad to hear that the last time we talked about this, you told me that they taught you that in school. And I just think that's awesome, because I'm sure I heard it over the years, but forgot about it. But I'm learning about it now in my startup experience. Go figure.
Right.
So I think it's beautiful. And there is a level of just humbling that needs to happen. And it's great if you have a manager that can kind of keep an eye on someone's ego and make sure that you're keeping it at bay. But in a lot of instances, people are taking on too much responsibility, and then they're out there thinking they can do everything. And then meanwhile, a gearbox falls off because they thought they could hack some bolt patterns, and somebody could have died. But
Well, and then, I mean, you bring up an interesting point as well, because the biggest amount of hubris that I've seen is, well, in individuals who are highly educated, like our PhDs, who literally are the experts of a specific thing on this planet, but that doesn't really make them the expert on, like, how that thing actually functions in the world.
Yeah.
Not to throw too much shade, but like the bubble ecosystem of academia that raises PhDs is just like, I get that you're a doctor on this, but like the practicality of some things still needs to be considered. and then
Yep.
and then the other group of people are people who are educated from very prestigious universities and colleges, because there's some level of, I have a title from a place that matters that makes me smarter than you. And I've had difficulties with both level of
Yeah.
cockiness from those groups of people, purely because they don't trust the plebeians and the hourly workers and the engineers who are covered in grease, or the mechanics. They just don't trust them. They're like, what do you know? And you're just like, everything, you soft-handed little prick. Like, I know everything. Pay attention to what the people who are doing things are doing. You're driving me nuts.
The minute you say I got my undergrad at MIT and my master's at Oxford, like, I'm going to assume you have soft hands. That's just a given.
Yeah, I'm going to assume you haven't built a single goddamn thing in your life. And I would love for you to prove me wrong.
Yeah. No, it's
and I know I have a chip on my shoulder because I'm wearing coveralls, but like, I just want for a minute for you to like get down on the ground with me and look at the thing that I've been complaining about for the last 4 weeks, because it's leaking. Because I think we're using the wrong grease, and I think it's too hot of an environment, and I think that it's unsafe, and I think that the calcs didn't consider everything.
Exactly. Our episode's coming to an end, Justine, but have we shared your terminology for the people that design versus the people on the floor yet? Because I really would love to share that to the world.
I don't mean to be so exclusionary. I just I get inflamed when there are people who don't have perspective. So in general, there are the folks who design, who do the big noodling and the calculations and all the things that I don't want to do. And they're living in their cube farm and they're playing on their CAD. And then there are the people who are in their steel toes and they're on the floor and they're making the digital concepts into physical realities, right? And so we have the people on the floor, and then we have the carpet dwellers. And the carpet dwellers, the ones who come out on the floor, are no longer carpet dwellers because they're there with us, and they learn. And when they design something, they build the prototype, and they learn, and they look, and they talk to their fabricators, and they're kick-ass engineers, and they're very well respected. And there are carpet dwellers who have 18 cups of coffee a day and are soft-handed, and they don't do anything physically tangible. And I'm glad that they're doing the work, because I don't want to do computer work, but I also need you to respect the feedback that you get from the people on the floor if something doesn't work.
I am so glad that we were able to get that out there, because it's one of my favorite things. And I carried on that legacy to other places I've worked. And I just think it's effing hilarious, Justine. So
it's not to be mean, but you can just tell. It's kind of like, I don't, have you ever been a food server, like a waiting staff or anything?
I worked at a soccer dome and served like nachos. That's about as close as I got.
Well, you had direct interaction with the patrons and some kind of customer service, but like, I worked as a server all through high school and through college, and you can tell when interacting with people who's only ever been served their entire life and who's been on the cooking line or been bussing the tables or cleaning the dishes or taking orders. You know, you can just tell. So don't be always served, or pleasantly surprise people by being nice and listening to other perspectives. and understanding when someone says they genuinely have a problem, instead of approaching it from they're probably an idiot and they're doing it wrong, to maybe I should go look at what they're doing to see how we can correct this.
Yeah, leave your ego at the door, people. And I would really love to get some more interaction from you guys on your own experiences and what things you've seen and what you want to hear about, because we could keep going on this topic. We'll probably move on to something else, but it's a real one.
Oh yeah, Yeah. And, school is imperative, and it creates a lot of useful, very important research and future goals. And it's not to diminish what it is contributing, but it is to acknowledge that there's a lot that needs to be done in the real world.
Exactly. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, we'll catch you later.
Thanks, Justine.
Thank you, Alicia.